Hey everybody, I have a question. Do you think that pets and loved ones come back and somehow speak to us in some form or fashion after they've passed away? I'm Kat and welcome to my channel, Living Solo, Living Well. And I had these thoughts on my mind for a long time to talk about because I wasn't sure if other people have experienced things that I've experienced. And what I'm talking about is whether or not those that we loved that have gone on and passed away, do they come back and talk to us? I've had some, I used to not believe that. And I've had some weird things that have happened to me in the last many years that kind of make me believe that that is true, that they do communicate in some way, in some form or fashion. And so I'll start with many years ago, I had a cat, and I've had cats all my life. So I had a cat named Simon. He was a tuxedo cat, and he was the most lovable lap cat you could ever imagine. He was wonderful. He was a diabetic, and he was on insulin, and I'd check his blood sugar. We've had a couple close calls where he almost didn't make it from his blood sugar dropping too low from too much insulin before I regulated it, because the vet was like, give him this much, doesn't matter, you don't have to check it. And the more I gave him, the more he continued to drop. So one day I came home and there was a guttural cry from the other room, and he couldn't get up and walk. He just wasn't doing good. So I rushed him to the vet, and his blood sugar had dropped so low that he was getting ready to go into seizures and convulsing. And so once I got that regulated, this one day, I guess you could say, when I had come back from a vacation with a friend, and while I was on vacation, I'll back up to that. I was in Florida, and while I was on vacation, I was checking in on Simon as far as the friend of mine, a couple friends that were coming in, taking care of him, feeding, and just making sure he was okay, giving him, if he needed insulin, giving him, checking his blood sugar and doing that. So anyway, there were rumors that he wasn't doing well. He was laying in a shower stall that I didn't use in a separate bathroom. And my friend was saying, does he usually do that? Does he lay in the shower on the floor of the shower? And he'd never done that as far as I know. So he wasn't eating very well. He was kind of nitpicking or picking at his food. And in fact, before I had left to go to Florida, I think it was the night before or the morning before, I fed him. His bowl was on the counter because I had a dog. So I had to feed my cat away from where he couldn't get his food. So I remember I think it was the night before I left when he had walked away and jumped off the counter, this part of a peninsula that he would have his bowl on. When he had jumped down, there was a wad of fur that was like, if you pulled it directly out of his skin, laying there like that, it wasn't like a hairball, it was just a clump of fur that was like almost removed from him. And I thought that was kind of strange, but I thought it was because of the diabetes, because that's one of the signs or symptoms of diabetes, so in cats. So anyway, I'm on my vacation, and so I was worried about him. And when we were coming home, about an hour away, I'm just saying, I'm coming, Simon, I'm coming, in my mind, like, I'll be there in about an hour. So I walk in the front door, and he is laying on the floor in the entryway under a little table and facing the door, just with his eyes glazed over. He was barely breathing. He was cold to the touch. And I threw my luggage in. I screamed. My friend came in. We called the vets. It was it was a Saturday evening, about a little after 5 o'clock. So nobody was open. I did finally get a call back from a vet that I left a message at, and they had called me back and said to rush him in. Anyway, so ended up, had to take him to a pet hospital, about an hour and some change away. And they had done some testing. His abdomen was very distended when I got home, and I could see that, which was odd. So Anyway, it was not his blood sugar. They did some testing they withdrew some fluid in his abdomen, and he ended up having stage 5B lymphoma. So he was pretty far advanced, and he was dying pretty much. So they ended up, I would not have been able to afford cancer treatments, and they said it wouldn't have given him maybe a few months to live, so maybe 6 at the most. So there was no way I was going to be able to do that, and I didn't want him to suffer or to be miserable for that amount of time. So I made the decision that he needed to be put down to spare him from just the agony that he was in. They couldn't even get a temperature on him. He was so bad. And anyway, that broke my heart. I was torn up, it was terrible. And so fast forward to weeks later, I think it was, I don't think it was months, but several weeks later, I had just gone to bed, and I was laying there, and you know how the cover drapes over the foot of the bed? And if you were to tug on the corner that hangs down off the bed, it would become tight on your feet. So I'm laying there, I had just gotten in bed, and I was getting all comfortable. And the next thing I know, I felt this tugging, like the blanket was being pulled. The comforter was being pulled at the bottom corner to where it was tight against my feet. And my eyes popped open because I had not gone to sleep yet. I was getting ready to. And my eyes popped open, and I laid there, and I didn't move, and I thought, that's just really weird. I had my bedroom door locked and shut, so I never let my pets in my room at that time, my dog or my cat. So I didn't know what that was, and I was really, I don't know, I was kind of scared, I guess you could say. So anyway, that went on for a little bit, and then it quit, and then I finally went back to sleep. Went to sleep. So another occasion shortly after that, and this has happened several times, where you know how cats will paw on a blanket, like they're making biscuits, that's what people say, and they're pawing on the blanket, and they are just getting ready to lay down and getting all comfortable. So I had gone to bed and had not gone to sleep yet, so it wasn't anything like a dream or anything in my where I was asleep and dreaming it. So the next thing I know, I feel that pressing, like he was there and pressing on the blanket to get comfortable to lay down. And my eyes popped open again, and I thought, it was the most bizarre thing, but it was definitely very pronounced. I could really feel it. And I thought, I tried not to be afraid, and I just, it was confusing, but it was just weird. It wasn't really scary. It was just, to me, it was like he was letting me know he's around, in spirit. And like I said, that has happened, gosh, probably 8 or 10 times since then. And I think he passed away in 2018. I think it was summer of 2018. So here we are 8 years later, and it's happened many times since then. So I just find that interesting. And then when the dog I had at the time, Zeke, he was very, very sick. All of a sudden, he just immediately became ill. I had to rush him to the vet the next morning when they opened. And I wasn't sure what was going on the night before, but the next morning he couldn't even stand. He didn't know how to go to the bathroom outside. It was snowy and icy, and he just stood there. So I lifted him in my car. He was about 85 pounds, and I had to hoist him up, get him in the car, took him to the vet. They had to come out and get him because he couldn't jump down. And anyway, they kept him. That was a Monday morning, and they kept him through Wednesday, and I had visited him every day. And then it ended up his red blood cell count was very low. As his body made new red blood cells, they were being killed off. They were dying. The red blood cells were not maturing. And so he became anemic, severely anemic, and he was on his way out, they said, unless he had massive blood transfusions, but that still didn't guarantee that he would make it. So I ended up on that Wednesday afternoon. It was around 3 o'clock, I guess, and I took him for his appointment, and I took him, some food, just something to eat while he was laying there, just to kind of like his last meal. They had pizza at the vet that somebody had ordered or they ate for lunch. So they gave him a slice of pizza. He never ate this stuff. So he had a slice of pizza, some turkey, some other things. And then, you know, he was put down. And I mean, I just sobbed and sobbed. And I thought, what am I going to do without him? Because he was my buddy. He was about maybe 11 years old or so, 12. And he was a big Australian Shepherd mix. He was very furry, almost like a Bernese Mountain Dog. And when they gave him the injection, I just buried my face in his fur and I just sobbed and sobbed. And so anyway, that evening I got home, I was watching TV, you know, kind of regrouped, and was reading articles on different things on my cell phone. I had the TV on, but it was on silent. And I had 2 cats, the same 2 I have now, but they were in another room asleep. So here I am in the living room, and I've got my cell phone. I'm reading an article. And it used to be when Zeke was alive, he'd kind of find a spot on the rug and he'd go move around in a circle. Then he'd finally get comfortable, lay down, and then let a heavy sigh out, like he was finally comfortable. So I'm reading this article and I'm so engrossed in it, and it's very quiet in the house. And then while I'm reading that article on my phone, I heard this heavy sigh. And I thought to myself, oh good, he's nice and comfortable. And then I looked up and I thought, I kind of looked around, and I just started crying. And I mean, it was audible. It was plain as day. He was letting me know he was okay. And I'm gonna try not to cry while I'm talking, but I feel like that was his way to let me know, I'm okay, Mom, it's okay. And, you know, in my mind, I still hear that heavy sigh, because like I said, it was as plain as day. I wasn't focused on him because I was reading some article about something. And, you know, it wasn't like I was thinking about him or, you know, having memories about him. I was totally somewhere else in my mind. And all of a sudden, there it was. And it just was so loud and so pronounced that I just, what could it be other than him just letting me know he's okay? So that was very, in a weird kind of way, it's comforting, and it's weird. It wasn't really scary. It was just shocking, I guess you could say. So anyway, then my mom had passed away a year before my dog did. It was the same day. So my dog was put down on the same day, exactly a year later. So when my mom had passed away, she was out of state. So I got there after she had COVID and then recovered. And then I had COVID. She was in Indiana. I'm in Tennessee. So I had COVID after she did. And then I recovered. And then she ended up having to go into a rehab facility to get stronger because she was very, very weak and her breathing was kind of rough. And, but she had, I think when she was in the facility, to where she could get strengthened, you know, strengthen her muscles and be able to get her energy back. She, it's a long story with the COVID vaccine, and I won't go into that because I don't want this to turn into something political. But anyway, she ended up getting the vaccine, and then a day or so, or a couple of days later, an amount of time later, she was not able to do some things. She couldn't pick her phone up. She couldn't breathe. She wasn't able to breathe very well. There were several things she couldn't do, and my sister and niece were outside of the window of her room at that facility. It was COVID times, so they could not go in. So they're calling the front desk. The nurses rush in, more people rush in. They transport her next door to the ER, and they intubate. So ended up, when they extubated about 5 days later, I had not made it up there yet because they were going to wait. I spoke to the doctor. They were going to wait till the day after I arrived so that all of us, well, there's 5 of us girls. I have 4 sisters. So they were waiting for all of us to arrive, and then they were going to extubate. Well, they decided to extubate a day early, so I couldn't be there because I hadn't left yet. So it was a 5 to 6 hour drive. And anyway, so they extubated while they had me on video with her where I could see them all there. And I knew she wasn't going to make it. So I think she lasted 3 hours after they extubated. and I got there 2 hours after she had passed away. So it ended up that eventually, when I'm in my living room one day, this is probably a couple months after she passed, and there was a certain perfume smell that kind of wafted in front of my nose, and I'm sitting in my chair in the living room one evening, and it kind of took me by surprise because all of a sudden it was very, I could smell it. It was very pronounced. There's that word again. And I sat there almost like a hound dog, where I've got my nose in the air trying to smell. And there was some kind of a very soft, pleasant smell that was very fresh. And I don't know if that was her perfume or her lotion or what, but it was very noticeable. And I could smell it for quite a good bit. And I kept thinking, what is that smell? What is that smell? It's like a perfume. Is that her perfume? Or, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know what to think about that. But I immediately got up and went in the bathroom, because after she had passed, one of my sisters sent me some of her things, and one was a hand lotion or a body lotion. And it was like lemon verbena or some smell like that, I think. Anyway, so I pumped some out and I rubbed it together and I smelled it, and I could not tell if that was the smell of the perfume, the scent that I was smelling in the living room. So I don't know what to think about that, but that has happened, several times, probably less than 5, I'd say. But it's happened, and I've caught a whiff of it, and it's not my perfume because I don't wear anything like that. And I usually don't have any perfume on in the evening, and nobody else is here. So how do you explain where that came from? I don't know. The only thing I can imagine is that she came to visit me, and that was her perfume, her lotion or whatever that she had on, that she would wear. So I don't know what to think about that. But, I have never thought, in the past, before my cat passed away, I had never considered that. I almost poo-pooed the idea of, oh, pets don't come back. They don't come back and visit you, or family members certainly don't. So I've switched that thinking now, and I'm wondering what everybody out there, what you guys have experienced, if you've experienced that. I'm a Christian, so I believe in life after death. But I never really knew where I stood, if I had a stance on whether the loved ones come back to visit once they're gone. I've never really thought about it, but a lot of times in the Christian world, people I know are like, no, that doesn't happen. You can't believe that. That's not how it is. It just simply can't. And, I'm of the mindset that these were instances where that happened. I don't know how else to explain it. It's not my mind. I'm not crazy. I don't think I am anyway. And those are the several times that these things have happened. And I will say that the perfume I have smelled since then several times. And there were other times where I was in bed. It's almost like things happen right before I go to bed. I'm not asleep. It takes me a while to drift off, so it's not like I drift off right away and then I'm in this weird state where I'm imagining things. But this one night, I woke up and, I was taking a medication for pain, a gabapentin is what it was, and I don't take it anymore because of the severe side effects that I had. But before I had those side effects, and maybe this was one of them, I don't know, but when I had taken it, and I took it just randomly for a week, it wasn't every day, it wasn't several times a day, I just didn't want to take it because I had patients addicted to it or dependent on it. And so anyway, I woke up one night and I'd already been asleep, and I woke up, I sat on the edge of the bed. This was after I had fallen and I had all the injuries, and I had to kind of sit on the edge of the bed to get my back okay to where I could get up and walk to the bathroom. And I was hurting a lot, so I sat up on the edge of the bed, and there was a short woman. My mom was short, I'm 5'2", and I think she was around that, or maybe had shrunk a little bit with age. And so anyway, I'm sitting there on the edge of the bed, and there was a woman standing in my room right next to the bed, like an old-fashioned woman. And she had some kind of long clothing on, and she had her arms crossed in front of her, And I looked right at her, and I had my phone in my hand. I grabbed it to shine the light, the flashlight, and I swooped it in front of me, which went through that image, that vision. And I don't know if I was dreaming, if it was a side effect from the gabapentin, or if it was something else. I don't know. So, but I wasn't afraid. I just took my hand on my arm and I swooped my phone through the image. And then I got up, I went to the bathroom, and I came back to bed. So I was telling that to one of my sisters shortly after that incident, and she had said she didn't know that I had taken the gabapentin, and so she had said, "Are you sure you weren't taking something that made you think that?" And I said, "I don't know what would have done that." So I don't know if it was that medication. I don't know what it was. That's not happened again, but I've had other weird things happen to where it's almost like you feel like somebody's in the room. You feel like there's a presence, but nobody's there. You're not able to see anybody. So I know that probably sounds weird, and just these are just weird things that, how do you explain them? I don't understand how to explain them other than maybe that was them appearing or coming to let me know everything's okay. I don't know. It's just really weird. So I just wondered what your thoughts are on this, and if anybody's had any kind of experiences like this. I'm pretty skeptical when it comes to people telling me things like that, or I used to be anyway. I had a friend years ago that I can't remember the entire story, but I know it was something about she was in a house that they were remodeling or something, and she heard, when she was in another room, she heard every cabinet door slam, like it was open and then somebody slammed it shut. Every single door, kitchen cabinet door. And she went in there, and some of the doors were still open, and she had not opened them. So when she had told me that story, there was more to it, but I can't remember every detail. And I'll probably tell it wrong if I tried. But when she was telling me this, I thought, there's no way that just doesn't happen. How's that happen? So, who am I to say if it did or didn't? I had my experiences, and if somebody were to say that didn't really happen, well, it did. These different instances did occur. So I try not to do that anymore with people, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, because who really knows? Who is the authority on that? Who really knows? Is there an authority on it? But I just wondered what everybody else has experienced, if anything at all. And I would love to hear your stories, because, it makes me feel not alone if I hear other people had similar stories or situations. So please leave a comment below and let me know. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for visiting my channel. And I will see you guys again soon.